It really fucked me up as a kid.
This podcast is not suitable for children or those who are easily disturbed. Spoiler warning for whatever is in the title of this episode.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the horrorofbabylonpodcast@gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/thehorrorofbabylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that The Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible and all other major podcast apps.
Welcome to episode 88 of The Horror of Babylon, where we review The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. I am Ryan, and with me as always is Daniel. Say hi, Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
I can't do it.
Yeah, I can't replicate it.
Nobody can. Thank you to our patrons, Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron. And Ben the Fourth, the Patron of Hope. And thank you to Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming, which you can visit at the Morgantown Mall at Morgantown, West Virginia, or the Mall Robinson in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And if you need some extra special help, you can go to the Georgetown University campus and seek out a counselor, Father Ron, and he will lock the door and he will help you. He doesn't get a lot of return patients, but you can go and see him if you want.
Hide your kids, hide your wife, everyone getting exercised up in here.
Everyone getting exercised. Trigger warning, all of it.
Yeah.
Anything that messes you up is in this book. It's all there.
Yeah.
It might be easier to say what there's not a trigger warning for.
Yeah.
So just, if there's something that you're particularly afraid of or triggered by, it's probably somewhere in here. Okay, so our history with The Exorcist. So me, like most people, or almost all people probably, it's the movie. I saw it, I don't know when, but 10, 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there. And I've made no secret of the fact that I'm not a religious person, but that didn't come about really until I was in high school. When I was in elementary school, middle school, I wouldn't say that I was like a very faithful person, but I was still like a person who identified as like believing in God and whatnot. So the first time I saw this movie, it really messed me up.
Same.
And I've only seen it twice. The second time I watched it was with you and Ash and Baby Penis, and I think we watched it on Halloween.
Yeah.
Like years ago.
And we used to do that sort of stuff.
Yeah, like fun stuff.
Yeah.
So I only seen the movie twice, and then I read this book a couple years ago, and I did something strange. I didn't rewatch the movie after I read the book. And now I've read the book a second time, and I still haven't rewatched the movie post reading the book.
I have also not rewatched the movie yet.
Yeah. And I purposely didn't because I wanted to try and focus on the book in this episode.
As fresh of.
Yeah. This is a great novel, but it mostly gets overshadowed by the movie.
It's probably the most famous and iconic horror movie of all time.
Yeah.
It's at least in the discussion.
Yeah. I'd say it's without a doubt in the top 3, if not number 1. What is your history with The Exorcist?
It's almost copy and paste yours, except I've seen it 3 times.
It's not a movie you can just throw on.
Yeah. We've talked about some movies that have like this overwhelming sense of dread. Mm-hmm. And this is one of them. The scene where she crawls backwards down the steps is something that I've had nightmares about.
Yeah, it really fucked me up as a kid. I think it's the movies that scared me most as a kid were Pet Sematary, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and The Exorcist.
Yeah, those are three that'll do it.
Yeah,
we should
Night of the Living Dead was also pretty scary.
We should really cover Texas Chainsaw Massacre sometime.
Yeah, if I'm going to watch it, it's going to be like with you and beers. And
yeah, we'll get some beers.
If Hef hasn't seen it, maybe we'll get him in on that.
Oh, that'd be fun.
I'm sure he hasn't.
We'll do fun stuff again.
Yeah, well, it's something fun.
The vampire's a pure myth, superstition. I may be able to bring you proof that the superstition of yesterday can become the scientific reality of today.
Background, so this novel was written by William Peter Blatty, who's written several other novels, including the sequel, Legion, and also a thriller novel called Demeter, as well as a few others. It was published in 1971. It was inspired by a 1949 case of demonic possession that Blatty heard about while he was a student at Georgetown University, which is in Washington, D.C., which is where this novel takes place, and the movie also takes place in D.C. And Georgetown University is the home university of the priests in this. So the book spent 57 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list.
Why isn't that on the Wikipedia?
17 consecutively at number 1. It is a best-selling novel and did really well.
Just read the accolade for them that was on the Wikipedia.
Okay, yeah. This is what was on the Wikipedia. According to research from the Spanish Book Institute, the Spanish translated version was the 8th most best-selling book in Spain in 1975, 4 years after it was published. Like, that's great.
It is great, but like, as a dude who wants to be a writer, I would murder for something even remotely close to that.
Let me read that first one again. So it spent 57 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. And, pre-Harry Potter, pre Stephen King, that was huge. Mm-hmm. 17 consecutive weeks at number 1.
That's such a better entry.
Yeah, that's... Wow. So, in terms of legacy, it gets overshadowed by the movie.
Yeah.
And we will save comparing the novel and the movie for the movie episode. Mm-hmm. Like you just heard, both of us intentionally did not rewatch the movie before recording this episode.
I've made a playlist of analysis things for the movie too, so I might have some more to say compared to the book. There's just not nearly as many YouTube videos just about the book.
Yeah, it's hard to just find information on it. Its Wikipedia page is way smaller than many of the other books that we've covered.
Yeah.
And one other thing of inspiration, the Exorcist, the title character, Father Lancaster Marin, was you'll lose this time, Marin. Was based on British archaeologist Gerald Lancaster Harding, who was one of the archaeologists who helped excavate the caves where the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. So
I want to be friends with an archaeologist priest. That sounds like such a fun combo.
Yeah, I really liked The Exorcist at the beginning when it came out because it had those Indiana Jones aspects to it.
I also really like that one.
And that's that. Another story in the classic, infallible 3-act structure. Good enough for Aristotle, good enough for The Simpsons.
Mr. Sislak, I have a feeling there's going to be one more act to this story.
Well, I'm not hanging around for that. 4 acts.
Structure and themes. So, what jumps out to me about the theme of this book is psychology kind of versus supernatural explanations. Yeah. The majority of the novel is Chris, Regan's mother, trying to determine why her daughter is acting the way she is and exploring medical, psychological, and eventually spiritual reasons for that.
Yeah, I would add modern scientific advancements versus our quote-unquote archaic spirituality, and especially in terms as treatments and beliefs, because you got a bunch of doctors that believe a certain thing has to be wrong because that's what the books say.
Yeah.
Versus what a priest like Marin sort of knows from a faith perspective.
Don't take what I'm saying as fact because I'm just spewing words, but the EKG says this, so it cannot be hysteria. But
scientific absolutism, which my favorite philosopher Nietzsche also wrote about. So
I can prove gravity.
Yeah,
that's about all I can prove. I felt like, as I was reading this for the second time, I really enjoy this book, but I feel like there's a good chance that you enjoy it even more than I do because you probably understand a lot more of the psychological babble.
They reference my favorite psychologists a lot in this book. Like when I got my degree in psychology, people are always like, "Oh, why don't you become a therapist?" It's like, "Well, I don't give a shit about treating people." I was more interested in the scientific aspect of it, and the history of it. My initial plan was to be like a quote unquote like a behaviorist or someone who studies other people or runs tests, as opposed to someone who treats someone. It's
basically like a psychology academic.
Yeah. That was my interest in the field. So.
I'm sure that's a hard job to make a living on unless you
have to
super smart and write really good papers.
Yeah. Which was apparently one of the few things I was good at, is I excelled at writing scientific papers, which is unfortunately interfering with some of my like novel writing because sometimes it comes across as very
technical.
Yeah. Very like to the point sentences are sort of it's not very poetic.
Well, maybe you should just be like the Tom Clancy of psychological horror.
Yeah. I've thought about that.
You could just go into like these terribly long rants about the psychology of this character. I mean, that's sort of like this novel kind of dips into that.
It dips its toe into that.
And it works really well. And I haven't read Legion yet. I'm wondering if it does too.
And I used to write like this until I got feedback where people criticized it. William Peter Blatty, and since we're talking about the book, I get to talk about shit like this, does a lot of sentence fragments or one-word sentences for emphasis. And I used to write like that. But a bunch of people told me to stop it. They're like, "Daniel, that you're going to get criticized for that." I'm like, okay, but the word's there for emphasis. So when I got to see like a big popular book writing the way that I used to try to write, it was just sort of neat.
I would also say, if you're an up-and-coming author, that you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
At least if you're wanting to get published the traditional route.
Yeah.
You should not do that. Now, if you become a success like William Peter Blatty,
and then you can do your little experiments for poetic language, is what I call it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I've thought about writing a book that an epistolary novel, and part of it is from a psychological study. Since I've had to write one of those for college.
You could do it from the psychologist's like journal notes,
and they're taking
the notes they're taking during a session,
and the data that they collect from it.
That could be cool.
It's something I've toyed with doing.
Yeah, that could be cool. You know what this book really reminded me of?
What?
Another novel that we read for this show that I found really surprising, but the more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Really reminded me of Ring by
100%. I was waiting for this.
Yeah.
I was waiting to talk about the comparisons between Ring and this.
I was just like, there were just points where obviously they're not the same book.
Yeah, but
there were points where I was like, wait, am I reading Koji's? No, I'm not. I'm reading Peter Blatty, but
they also have kind of a similar cadence in the way they write.
So one, the book's all about the investigation.
Yes.
And it's also a lot of medical investigation, like even more so than Ring. But like the similarities there are crazy. And I wouldn't say that Asakawa and Chris McNeil are that comparable, but they have like a similar struggle.
There's like a similar, I'd say they're probably in the same like archetype umbrella.
Yeah, they both are parents. Like, one is trying to save their child's life, one is trying to save their own life, but it's essentially for the same thing. Like, as a parent, you want to save your own life for your child, and as a parent, your main responsibility is saving your child's life.
And halfway through the book, he has to try to save his child's life anyway. So.
Yeah. And Chris, like, she doesn't have as explicit of a clock as Asakawa has. She,
Yeah.
but she knows, like, everybody's telling her that if Regan continues the behavior that she's doing, she's going to have a heart attack. She's going to die.
Yeah, she's just going to rot away.
And she's also just withering away.
Yeah.
So, like, there is a time clock there. She's under a crunch. So, like, she has to do something, and she has to have help to do it. And then, what do you think about Father Karras and Ryuji?
There's also definitely like a similarity there in terms of like how they approach the situation. Ryuji's like the edgelord version of Father Karras, where Karras is somebody that's actually like struggling with his faith, and like he's had these experiences that are really shaking him, where Ryuji makes up his experiences to sound like, I mean, he does it to sound cooler than he is, but like when you say, I made up a story about me raping people to sound cooler. Yeah. But it's a very different sort of character.
But they're both of them are not like the Luke Skywalker, King Arthur, valiant hero type.
Yeah.
They're both like flawed people. They both have sins. Father Karras like abandoned his mother to become a priest.
And there's this other similarity between the two of them where they both kind of want it to be real. Because Karras keeps going, no, it's not enough evidence. But he keeps digging because he wants to find that evidence to like prove the demonic. And Ryuji wants to prove the supernatural at the same time.
That actually ties into another comparison with another character from a book that we recently read. But we're going to table that.
Tabled.
To characters.
Yeah.
Okay. Religion is obviously, like...
It's all over the place.
And it's funny because, like, you think... You've seen the movie and then you're reading the book and you think it's going to be, like, all religion. And it's actually, like, way more, like, medicine and psychology. Not more than religion, but more than you're expecting.
It's a very human sort of evolution, in my opinion, anyway. Because it's like when everything else fails, then she finally turns to religion. Because where else can you go?
I mean, and that happens with real life. I mean,
all the time.
And like, how many movies or books have people said, "What can I do?" Pray.
Yeah,
that's what you can do.
Yeah, that's the option you have left.
Yeah, and it makes a big deal in the beginning of the book of showing that Chris is not religious. That it doesn't really like label her as an atheist, but she seems to be somewhere within that umbrella.
Yeah.
She's secular. She's not religious. She's raising her daughter not to be religious. They don't talk about God.
There's a explicit line in the book where she doesn't believe anything happens after you die. It's just is it. We're dead.
That's it. You're dead.
Yeah.
Which really, if you keep that in mind, that adds even more to the drama of the early part of the story, because if Regan dies, Chris will not have the comfort of knowing that, well, at least she's in heaven.
Yeah, it's just it. I just fell to protect my daughter, which is a terrifying, like, nihilistic prospect.
Just gone.
Yeah. There is one thing I don't know, I think it probably fits in here with structure and themes. Maybe it fits better under religious talk. But there's a lot of, like, the satanic panic stuff that they talk about.
I also wanted to bring that up, yeah.
Yeah. So.
I was wondering, actually, let's do that under Kiss Me Fat, or...
Power of Christ Compels You. Yeah. Okay, so we'll table that for now.
And that's something I wish I would have done research on before this book.
But I do think that also ties into the themes.
I do, yeah.
So, there's a lot of themes.
Okay, so continuing with the investigation theme, it's not just Chris and the doctors and then eventually Father Karras trying to figure out what's wrong with Regan, but there's also the subplot of Burke Denning's murder, and then
Kidman
and the Kinderman, Detective Kinderman investigating how Burke Dennings died, and that ties into this.
Which also, it got me, like, my criminal justice background, like, fixed. This book had everything for Daniel.
Yeah. And that's some stuff for me, too, but it's definitely, like, more... it's more leaning towards your interests, for sure, but there's a lot I like in this book.
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
So there's a huge cast of characters in this book,
so many.
Which is weird, because we're not going to compare this to the movie.
And we can't... I don't even think we can talk about every single character.
And we're not.
Yeah.
But just real quick note about the movie. The movie is very intimate.
Yeah.
there are a lot of characters, but only like a handful of them really matter, and it feels like you only really spend time with like 4 or 5 characters.
It compacts it.
Yeah. So I put them in kind of groupings, and we're not going to talk about all of them, but we're going to kind of talk about the really important ones and then just mention a couple of things about the less important ones. So the first grouping is the McNeil household, which of course we got to start with, who is essentially our protagonist, or one of our 2 protagonists, Chris McNeil, mother of Reagan McNeil, movie star, mother, divorcee. What do you think of Chris?
I like Chris. We don't get a lot of like movie star characters.
No.
And it was sort of interesting to see that, like, you see her hope to direct.
Yeah.
And you also see, like, her struggles, like, I can't remember what kind of car she wanted. I want a Lamborghini. Well, and her financial advisor was like,
you can't buy it.
You need to work this year, and you can't get one. And she's, like, pouting about not being able to get, like, a top 1% car.
Yeah, she said, like, I made $800,000 last year. Why can't I buy a car?
Yeah.
And he's like, well, you have this.
Having to walk her through it. And it's very first world elite problem-y. But they somehow managed to still make her sympathetic by relating you to her daughter and her history with her husband.
What I like about Chris is it would be so easy to write her as a neglectful mother, but she's not.
She still goes out of her way.
She takes care of her daughter, and she makes movies.
Yeah.
Which, based on what I know about the film industry, is like next to impossible.
Yeah.
And maybe it was different in the 70s or the 60s, but maybe it wasn't. I don't know. She seems like she works very hard, and she loves her daughter. And she has a good relationship with her daughter.
I will say that if maybe it's just because I've read this book and I've seen the movie, that if I found my kid playing with a Ouija board and starting to talk about an imaginary friend, I'd be like, nope.
Yeah. We do not own a Ouija board. We do not.
I keep trying to get them to let me take one to work, and my bosses have forbidden me from taking one in.
I could see where that might go over poorly. I can definitely see that.
Yeah.
I like how invested she is. I mean, obviously she's invested in finding what's wrong with her daughter, but I'm just like, I'm with her like every step of the way, and I'm like, I'm upset when things go bad, and I'm sad and I feel bad for her when she has to give up the directing opportunity. Like, I'm just very emotionally invested in her and her story, and it's very, as a parent of a child who's had health problems, nothing even close to, but still, like,
it's very easy for you to empathize.
Yeah, I think Chris is one of the most one of the mother characters in pop culture that I relate to the most.
I also, because some people might be like, well, why doesn't she just commit her daughter when that's being recommended? But you get, like, the backstory, and you can, like, understand the psychology of why she's terrified of her kid dying in a hospital when she's not there.
I also just, like, understand.
Yeah.
Like, to me, like, that's not an option. So, my son has health issues, and when he first had these issues, we spent a lot of time in the hospital, and he still has these issues, or it's not a big deal. He has periodic fever syndrome. He gets fevers like all the time.
Yeah.
And he's gotten up to like 105.
That's pretty high.
And it used to be that whenever he got fevered, we'd go to the hospital, and they'd keep him there a week, 2 weeks. And I think it was like 2019, 2020, we spent like a ridiculous amount of time in the hospital. And he still has these fevers, but we've learned to treat at home under doctor's supervision. It's always better to have the kids at home if at all possible.
Yeah.
So I don't criticize Chris at all for wanting to have her daughter at home. And obviously her situation with Reagan is way, way different, but
a different character would have committed her.
Yeah.
And gone to direct the movie.
Yeah.
But that's not how the character was written, and I'm glad that's not how she was written.
Yeah, I don't think I would like the book.
And you also get, like, and she's still disappointed she can't direct the movie. It's a huge opportunity.
I mean, why wouldn't you be?
And you understand it, but you understand these choices. It's just
because I would have to do the same thing. Like, I I would be upset about it, but I would have to say, no, thank you, I'm sorry.
Yeah, exactly.
It sucks, but that's just, that's how life is sometimes.
Exactly.
Okay, so we'll talk more about Chris in relation to these other characters. So Regan is the next one I have, and she isn't really so much of a character. And it's funny because at the end of the book, after Father Karras dies, I think it's in the epilogue, Chris is talking to Father Dyer, and they mentioned that Father Karras never even knew Regan. And I had the thought that as a reader, you really don't even know Regan either.
Yeah, you get maybe like a scene.
Mm-hmm.
It's like when they go out for like the food, and her mom's wondering where she puts it all.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
You get that where Chris comes down to breakfast, and Regan had put a rose on her.
Yeah,
and that guy kind of just shows that how sweet this kid is. Like, how many kids do shit like that for their parents? Like,
yeah.
Almost none.
And I'm just like, but a lot of what we get about Regan comes from Chris's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think we're ever put in Regan's head.
No. I think the vast majority of it is Chris or Father Karras and a little bit of Kinderman.
Yeah.
And then the first chapter is Father Marin.
Yeah.
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I don't remember ever being... And it's never like first person from those characters.
It's like third person omniscience that sometimes dives into what they're thinking.
Yeah. It's weird because like there was a specific example where when Chris and Father Karras are meeting and the narrator was, talking about Chris, and then the narrator says, and then Father Karras walked up. The narrator was talking as if it was from Chris's perspective, but she wouldn't have known who Father Karras was. Mm-hmm. So it's a little weird, but it works.
Yeah. It's a delicate balance to walk.
Mm-hmm. This is the only William Peter Blatty novel I've read where, if you've looked at our schedule, we're doing our next book is Legion.
I just finished Legion the other day.
Great. I'm excited to see if this is kind of a flash in the pan for him, if this is like his good novel, or if he has other good books. So
I will say nothing.
Okay, say nothing.
Sharon Spencer.
Not only Sharon, but also the Engstroms, Carl and Willie. It's kind of crazy that all three of them stuck it out.
The Kraut, the Jew killer.
He's a Nazi. He's hanging out with Himmler.
Sorry, I
know
I hate how funny I found those interactions.
No, they were funny. I'll talk about him when we get there.
Yeah.
I was kind of shocked that all three of those characters like stuck it out and stayed with Chris and Regan throughout the entire thing.
I think some of like the timeline of like how long these people have been around is muddled in my memory.
I think she said that the Engstroms had been with her for 6 years.
So that's a long time to be around a child, and then to see a child get that ill.
So
I can see I've gotten attached to other people's kids, like through relationships. I still remember some other kids' birthdays. Mm-hmm. So I can see you're living there, or if you're not living there, you're like always taking care of them. Mm-hmm. And they live there. And you get super attached to that family and that kid.
Yeah.
So I mean I've gotten super attached. I still see my stepson from my divorce of all things. So
I guess it also says well about Chris, because she obviously, like, aside from the couple like outbursts she has because she's fucking stressed out,
and they're understandable.
She treats them all really well.
Yeah.
So, other than that, like, okay, I guess
the biggest thing I'd say about Sharon is she sort of puts like this spirituality seed in Regan's head.
Yeah.
Because Sharon's portrayed almost as that, like, I was gonna call it like that upper class socialite that's always looking for the spiritual answer.
Yeah, she's sort of like hippie beatnik-ish.
Of trendy religion is what I would call it. You know what I mean?
Because it mentions that she's done chanting, that she's done meditation.
She tries everything other than traditional religion because that's boring. That's what old people do.
She is spiritual. Like she believes in God.
Yeah.
She believes in creationism, but she's not like, I'm getting up at 5 every Sunday morning to go to church.
Yeah.
The Engstroms, what do you think of the subplot with their daughter
I really like it, but mostly because it ties into my other favorite subplot, which is the Kinderman investigation. And because they don't come right out and say that, and you're like, man, what's he piecing together? Because we know the answers as, like, the reader, but it's still kind of neat to see how he's piecing it all together. So
I also like it because it also ties into, like, the parent-daughter theme and how you're, like, willing to do anything for your daughter. Carl is, like, literally, like, I'm not saying you should do this, but his daughter is an addict, and he just wants to be in her life so bad that he's giving her money to buy drugs, which is not good.
And he's all about begging her to go get help.
Yeah, but at the same time, he's trying to help her.
It's a very tragic subplot, too.
Yeah, it is. It does have a happy ending, though, apparent at the end. Well, at the end, you find out that their daughter is in a clinic, and Kinderman tells Father Karras to tell Carl, but Karras dies
before he can
tell Carl. Yeah, so
yeah.
Presumably they found out through another way, but it's sad. We kind of buried the lead on Father Karras, but now we'll talk about the Jesuits, and we'll limit it to just Father Karras and Father Merrin. But we'll start with Father Karras, who I would say is the other protagonist as opposed to Chris. What do you think of Father Karras?
I really like him. A lot of times whenever, like, you hear the title The Exorcist, or the you see the poster, and then you start spending time with this priest, you're like, oh, he's the exorcist. But he's not.
It gets me every time I watch the movie and read the book.
Yeah.
I always... and it's always in the first chapter, I was like, who is the... Oh, this guy's the exorcist.
Yeah, the actual exorcist is probably the most minor of all of these characters we're going to talk about.
Yes, and actually, the first time I watched the movie, I was, like, upset that Karras wasn't the exorcist. I was like, why don't they let that guy do it? He's cool.
I really like him. I talked to you about this some other time, about how his, like, psychiatric beliefs are really in that 1970s time, where telekinesis and telepathy were just kind of assumed to, on some level, be true.
Yeah.
So that wasn't enough to prove demonic possession. But today, if a psychologist could prove that someone's slamming doors shut with their mind, they'd be getting a Nobel Prize.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of little stuff like that, but it's still interesting to kind of see that applied into novel form. So I got to enjoy reading about all of that.
It is definitely a period piece.
Yeah.
It was written in the 70s, it takes place in the 70s, and it wasn't meant to be a period piece, but it is now.
Yeah, it was hard for me, because there's, different types of psychology, and this is a small spoiler for the sequel, is they actually kind of bring up, like, the different types of psychology, like, what kind of psychologist are you? It's a question that gets asked. And I'm sitting there going, Karras is giving me these, like, very Jungian vibes, like the subconscious and the collective subconscious. So, like, the things that are, like, underlying truths for all humans. It's super cool to read. I was getting excited reading this book.
I always like the character archetype of the Catholic priest who is struggling with their faith. People who listen to the podcast regularly, when I mentioned comparing him to another character earlier, it's probably no surprise that I'm talking about Father Callahan.
Yeah, it's very comparable.
Yeah. To the point, like, Salem's Lot came out really close to this. 1975. So Salem's Lot came out 4 years after this novel, which came out in 1971. I don't believe that there's any real possibility that Stephen King didn't read The Exorcist within that time period.
I would be surprised. But the idea of, like, a struggling priest and the reason...
It's not something that William Peter Blatty invented.
Yeah,
no.
So I could see that being wholly independent, but at the same time, it doesn't matter because we got two characters that we like.
And one thing that is really unique about Father Karras, at least to me, like, I'm not aware of any other characters. So it's normal for a Catholic priest to be like struggling with their faith. The reason why he struggles with it, or one of the reasons, is because of his own sin. And his sin was that he abandoned his mother to become a priest because he couldn't stand to see like the poverty that they lived in, and he was ashamed of the poverty that he grew up in, and ironically became a priest and took a vow of poverty. And another layer of irony is that after becoming a priest, he then became a doctor. And you know, not all doctors make a lot of money, but most doctors make
enough money,
more money than the average person.
Yeah.
So he is a doctor with a vow of poverty, a profession that normally makes a generous amount of money. So he's just like, he's a mystery wrapped up in an enigma, you know?
I really love the scene where, like, another young priest comes to talk to him, and at first he's just like, I just want you to leave me alone, like, in his head.
Yeah, like, go away.
Because, he just wants to come here and talk because he's afraid that if he goes talks to anyone else, they're going to think he's a homo.
Well, he says that. Like, the other priest says that, like, Father, I just want to put my arm around another guy, but I'm afraid they're going to think I'm gay.
Yeah, I don't want them to call me a slur.
So that actually kind of made me think, like, surely, like, there's, like, a genre of books, of, like, gay romance books about priests.
If not, we should write them.
Yeah, and I'm kind of curious. Like, I kind of want to read one.
Yeah.
Because that seems like something that I could maybe get into.
If it hasn't been written, we should just take this script for Brokeback Mountain, but do a find and replace for cowboys with priests.
I'm sure it's been done.
Yeah.
I'm sure it has been.
But at the end of the day, he still helps that person because that's his job and that's what he does.
Yeah, I think that ties in to something that Father Marin says towards the end of it, where they're on a break from their exorcism and they're talking to each other, and Father Marin tells Father Karras that he also struggled with faith because he didn't feel the capacity for love in him that he thought that he should as a priest. But what he eventually realized is that it doesn't matter if he emotionally feels that love or not. It's his actions that really matter. If he's, working with someone to help them, it doesn't matter if he feels love for them or not, as long as his actions show that love.
Have you seen the anime Vinland Saga?
No, not yet.
Okay, there's a priest in it, and he's a struggling priest alcoholic character. And there's a scene where, like, this prince is talking to him, being like, what do you mean that this person didn't love me? And they're talking about, like, how this guy, like, raised him and always cared for him. He's like, that's not love, that's discrimination. And he talks about how, like, the big distinction is that true love, like, in the godly sense, is like a universal precept. It's not discriminatory between, like, he did those things for you because you were his prince, his person, not because you were a person in general.
Yeah, I mean,
it's such a great. You need to see. It's such a great speech,
and that ties, like, right back to, like, the teachings of Jesus Christ, where you
literally have to love everybody.
Something that, like, got me off of going to church and Christianity when I was young, in the area that we live, a lot of very religious people are very intolerant of other groups and very hateful towards other groups. And it always struck me as odd when I was young, and still to this day, that this just, like, the complete opposite of the teachings of Jesus Christ, because, like you said,
it's discrimination.
He's just like, love everybody, forgive everybody. Like,
did I stutter?
You don't have to like, but you do have to tolerate, and you do have to, your actions have to show.
I promise I'll send them to hell.
Yeah.
But come on. I'll send you too.
But you get what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, I do get what you're saying. I just, when I was reading this book, I thought about that speech from Vinland Saga.
No, that makes sense. That sounds just like what Father Marin was trying to say, like, towards the end of the book.
He says it a lot nicer, because the Vinland Saga is, like, very Game of Thrones dreary. But
crap.
Yeah.
So let's jump to Father Lancaster Marin, the Exorcist, the title character. I like the premise of this character, but you don't get to find out enough about him.
It's like Blatty intentionally left breadcrumbs and then just never did anything with them. Like, he almost... Because we get a prequel movie, but he never wrote a prequel himself.
Right. And I saw The Exorcist the beginning, like, on release in theaters with my dad.
Yeah.
And I really liked it. And then I bought it when it came out on DVD, and I watched it again and really liked it. And then I don't think I've seen it since then, and that was like 2004.
I can't remember which one the beginning is, because there's 2 prequel films that use, like, the exact same premise.
Mm-hmm. I haven't seen the 5th movie, the second prequel. That's the only one I haven't seen. I've seen the original, the 2 sequels, the first prequel. I have not seen the second prequel.
Okay.
Does the second one also have Stellan Skarsgård?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Well, because the second prequel was pretty much just a remake of the first prequel.
That seems weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it is weird, but it exists.
But I like that movie because it's like it's the exorcism in Africa that's mentioned in this book,
because you get like so much. The breadcrumbs are so good too, because you got like the prologue where he's in the desert and
he's in Iraq.
Yeah, and he gets the Pazuzu statue, and he has that feeling. He knows what's coming, and then he goes and sees Reagan, and the demon is just like, "You will lose."
Yeah, we've done this before, but this time I will win.
And then just like little things that he says where. Karras is trying to tell him about the different personalities, and he's like, "No, there's just one.
There's just one.
Everything else is deception.
It's an attack."
Yeah, I've done this before.
Yeah. Just shut up, noob.
There's a reason you're not on lead here.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
But you get those, and it makes me want to know more. But at the same time, would I be happy if I actually got the definitive version?
It's hard to say.
Yeah.
Like,
so
if like William Peter Blatty like actually like legit like wrote a whole novel around Father Lancaster,
I would read it.
Yeah, I would definitely read it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it would be as good or better, or it's hard to say.
Yeah, but it's fun to think about.
Yeah.
But that's what I like about him, is I like breadcrumb characters where you get kind of like these little hints of shit like that.
He just really had this like Obi-Wan Gandalf kind of vibe to him, where he instantly reassures everybody around him.
What's Reagan's middle name? What a lovely name.
Yeah, Teresa. That's a lovely... I love how he kept coming back to Damien. What I could do with a name like Damien.
Yeah, he really seems like someone I would want to hang out with.
Yeah, and he's right. Like, Damien is just like a strong name.
Do you know a Bruce? That one's spelled with a Y.
Yeah. Father, Lancaster's such an unusual name. Were you named after someone? A ship, I think. So yeah, even though he's...
The older people are, the weirder things they were named after.
Yeah.
My mother was named after a berry my father was eating. Or her father was eating.
Yeah.
You knew what I meant.
Yeah, I did. So yeah, even though he's not, you don't spend nearly as much time as you do with him, with these other characters, I do enjoy him.
Yeah.
All right, so let's keep going on to the other category. So the first one I have is Detective Kinderman.
He is my favorite character.
He's my least favorite. I have very specific reasons, but I'm going to let you go first.
I think the reasons I love him might be reasons that you don't. Because he plays this like bumbling idiot, and it's a super old school detective tactic to get people to lower their guards to where they offer more information and they'll talk to you again, and like, oh yeah, I'll let you in this room so that you can scrape your thumb against a statue and go and get like little pieces of evidence. It's like he's planning like 5 steps ahead in terms of investigating, with how he's like asking these super specific questions to Carl, and he's like, he already knows the answers, and then he's like leading. It was very fun for me to read.
So you actually like read a physical book, correct?
Yeah.
All right, I listened to this in audiobook.
Oh, okay, that would.
And the reason I don't like Kinderman is the dialogue. He never stops talking.
Yeah, he rambles.
And I could see it being a lot less offensive when you're reading it, because when you're reading, you can go at your own pace, faster, slower, whatever. When you're listening to an audiobook, you go at the pace of the narrator unless you like adjust the speed, and it just like he just never ever stops.
And it's great because he like and you can see it when it happens. He flips a switch between being like this fat waddling detective that no one's taking seriously. Oh, this is just perfectly routine.
He's a sack of shit.
And then he flips it and is like,
all of a sudden
you have the right to remain silent. Do you want a lawyer?
All of a sudden he goes from like sack of shit to Columbo.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
and that's just so cool to me.
I like that stuff. It's just, and I think I would like the character if I didn't listen to the audiobook. But it's too much. He has too much dialogue. I thought I was watching a Quentin Tarantino movie.
He is 100% a Quentin Tarantino character, too.
Also, the audiobook, this is mostly a pro. It's a con in this instance, but the audiobook is read by William Peter Blatty.
Oh, that's so cool!
And he does this awful Jewish accent. Like this...
He's not Jewish, is he?
No.
Oh, I didn't think so.
He does like a super thick, like, my father, would you say that I go to the, like, I can't do it.
I hate to admit this, but that's how he talked in my head.
Well, I mean, that's how he's supposed to come off, because he is a Jewish character.
He's a Jewish detective.
But the way that he reads them in the audiobook is just like the most stereotypical way possible.
Yeah.
And it's hard to listen to in huge chunks.
Oh no.
Not because I'm offended by it, but just because the sections are so long.
Yeah, and you're getting a lot of the stereotype.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that.
So speaking of stereotypes,
Burke Dennings.
So
hold on. Do you know what she did? Your cunting daughter.
She fucking killed me. She threw me out of the cunting window. I'm assuming you have not seen Mary Poppins in recent years.
No, I was maybe 9, 10.
So, there's a very famous actor who's in that movie, and the scene that he's in the movie is the scene where they have the tea party on the ceiling. Mm-hmm. Do you recollect that at all? Okay, let me pull up the actor really quick.
Does he play Burke Dennings?
No.
Oh, okay.
But that's the guy I picture, and the way he because the way that this actor talks is how William Peter Blatty reads him in the audiobook.
Okay, wow.
Uncle Albert. Edwin.
No, yeah, this is pretty close.
He talks like this!
Yeah, no, that's pretty close to what I pictured.
I'm sure there's gotta be like... Okay, you probably... Have you seen the Diary of Anne Frank? Or at least probably not in a long time if you have. If you ever see a movie with this guy, he has a very, very distinct way of talking. And it's how William Peter Blatty reads the character. And it is...
So this right here is about what I was picturing.
Yeah, that was what's in my head. But if you look at what the character looks like in the movie, this is the character in the movie. But yeah, I like the character. I like the subplot. I like every time the demon uses the Burke Dennings personality. I think it's amusing.
I like every time that Chris interacts with Dennings, because you get like a sense of history there.
And there's a lot of world building through them.
And she's like, I don't like this scene, and he acts like a director and coaxes her and goes, okay, well, yada yada yada.
We'll do it and cut it later.
And then he gives her advice, like, you gotta get a good cutter. Mm-hmm. Everything else after.
And he has this weird quirk that when she complains that he rips off a little piece of paper or off a script page and eats it.
Yeah.
It's just like this weird little quirk. And it's part of how she realizes that he was in the room with Reagan the night that he was killed, because the book about witchcraft was also in the room, and there's a little piece of paper or like ripped off one of the pages.
Severe alcoholic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
Kind of I didn't picture Kubrick, but the way, like, when he was drunk reminded me of, like, stories you hear about Kubrick being very abrasive and opinionated.
Yeah. What was grating to me about the character but I didn't dislike it better because I thought it worked for building the character, was the stories where he would get so drunk that he would call someone at 2 a.m. and then completely just let loose on them. And then the next day, he would either not remember it or pretend not to remember, which to me is worse.
That's something, yeah.
Yeah. But no, I thought like the character and the subplot like really worked with it. I think most of his subplot is excised in the movie, but I don't really remember.
Most of what you get is just him dying, and then the investigation around it. The demon. So, the demon. I'll let you start. The demon can sometimes be hard to talk about because for the majority of the book, you're being led to believe that it's a legion. It's a whole bunch of people inside of Reagan.
Well, when I read this time, I tried to pretend as if I had never seen the movie.
Yeah.
And it's actually a significant portion, like maybe like 50% or better of the book before anything truly supernatural happens.
Yeah.
And it couldn't actually be described with explained with medical science.
And that's awesome. And the demon even like flat out tells Karis that is like, I need to give you just enough to stay interested.
Yes.
But just enough room for doubt.
Yes.
Because that's how he fucks with it. The demon's even like, well, this will make us one. And what happens at the end? Spoilers, Karis gets possessed.
Yeah, but that's what he does it. And that's a kind of there's a lot of questions about the demon in the end. Did Father Karis... Did the demon jump to Father Karis because the demon lost control of Reagan? Or did Father Karis try to incite the demon to get him to possess him so that Father Karis could throw himself out the window?
There's no definitive answer. My reading is basically just based off of the Jesus story where he like cast the demons out of a person and put them into pigs.
And they ran off the cliff.
He cast the demon out. And he was the only place for it to go at the time.
Yeah.
But on some level, he knew that's what was going to happen at the same time. Like I'm going to be the vessel.
Yeah.
Which let him fight it off just enough to throw himself out the window.
And then like the other big question, or one of the other ones, if you watch the movie, like it's very explicit that this demon is Lucifer. It's the Christian devil. And in this, like for more than half the book, you're questioning, like, is she even possessed, or is she just fucked up? And then you're like, okay, she is possessed, but is it the devil, or is it a demon?
I'm not really the devil. I'm more of a minor demon. It's a turn of phrase.
And then you're also like, is this even, like, a demon within, like, the Christian sense of it, or is this, like, an older pagan demon? Because the book specifically... He makes a point of telling you that exorcism is older than Christianity. Not that obviously, like, and that doesn't mean that...
And it flat out gives you, like, the statues of Pazuzu, which is usually what people say is what's possessing Reagan, but...
Or is it just, like, a pagan demon that we interpret as the devil through the lens of Christianity, or does it even matter?
So I have something small for this. Is like in the early days of Catholicism, because there was a bunch of like polytheistic religions. They, instead of saying that your shit wasn't real, they're like, no, those gods were real, but they were actually just demons.
Yeah, and that's
sent there to deceive you.
That's how they helped convert people. Is they took, like December the 25th was, I want to say, Jupiter's birthday.
Yeah. So I feel like it's again not giving us a definitive answer, but it's playing around with that idea by showing the statue of Pazuzu and talking about like ancient things.
I think the first time I read the book, I was a little disappointed that it wasn't explicitly the Christian devil, Lucifer, because there's just like so much ambiance with that religious figure. But I enjoyed the vagueness of it a lot more on the second read.
Yeah, same.
I'll kill you all! I'll drive you crazy, and I'll kill you all! I'm every nightmare you ever had. I am your worst dream come true. I'm everything you ever were afraid of.
In terms of like weird shit the demon does, do you got any favorites?
Well, first, let's jump to scary shit.
Scary shit.
Is this book scary?
It scares me. A lot of it terrifies me, frankly, but a lot of that's personal reasons.
It scared me the first time I read it, This time I didn't really find it scary. I just found it like more like gross and shocking.
Mm-hmm.
So what is scary about this book to you?
Okay, and this will come up again in a later episode, but in this one specifically, like when he's recording Reagan's voice and he sends it off to like a language specialist, and he's like, "It's English. It's just English backwards." One of like my biggest fears is like listening to an old tape and there's something on there that's not supposed to be, or it's just wrong enough. That idea freaks me out. I can't even explain why, but a voice on there that's not supposed to be there.
Yeah,
or you find out that this gibberish is actually words, and like you even get like Marin being repeated on there.
I can't imagine any situation where I would be actually listening to a physical audio tape.
I still do, but
yeah, I don't. I got rid of mine a long time ago.
I'm a big fan of like analog stuff, so
I like books.
Yeah.
Everything else, I've basically gone digital.
Well, I mean, even like if you had a digital recording of something and then it's changed just enough, or there's something that's on there that like they digitally analyze it and they tell you this isn't possible, but there it is.
That would be a lot less freaky to me because it's so much easier to alter a digital recording as opposed to like an actual like tape.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't find it scary. The scary part of the book is the child that is sick and you're the parent and you cannot help them.
I mean, that's also scary.
Yeah.
But I would be way more freaked out if I was getting confirmation that demons might be real. Because now I have to all of a sudden rethink my decision making.
Yeah, I've just kind of determined that if I ever find myself in a position that Christianity is the one true faith, that I'm just fucked, and I just have to be okay with it.
No, it's never too late, Ryan.
Well, I mean, that is the thing about Christ, is that he died to absolve all our sins, and I can have a deathbed confessional and it'll be fine. Yeah. Which is also a thing that's so you can just be as shitty as you want and just.
But that's the idea. It's just like the idea that we've talked about this before. Is like one of my. I don't believe in the supernatural, but I want to. I'm very. That's how I relate to Karis and Ryuji and those sorts of characters. Is like. I feel that drive to want to prove myself wrong, but then what do I do once I do?
And I'm kind of the opposite, where I do believe in the supernatural. I think that telepathy and telekinesis are completely possible ideas. I don't think that they're common. Mm-hmm. I think that, we use 10% of our brains, and if we evolve and get to access the other 90% of our brains, that it's hard to say what we could be capable of. But in terms of like what scares me in a book, it's very real things. It's a kid being hit by a car, a kid being sick and you cannot help them.
It's called adult fear.
Yeah,
that's the name of the trope.
Yeah, but like a spooky voice on a tape, like that doesn't do it for me like at all.
Mm. I'm afraid of spooky supernatural shit being proven. I would much rather the world be simple. I guess the world wouldn't be simple. Explainable.
Yeah, I don't think the world will ever be explainable in our life.
Yeah. But
who knows? Maybe we'll get that Star Trek reality. So what's your favorite fucked up thing that Reagan does? So I like her walking backwards, but specifically what I like about it is that she sneaks up. This would fuck me up.
Yeah.
She sneaks up behind Sharon and pretends to be a snake and like hisses her tongue at like Sharon's ankles.
And she's like crab walking while doing it.
That if somebody did that to me in the dark, I would absolutely lose my shit.
That's one of those. And see, that's kind of a combination between that weird psychological shit and adult fear. Something's wrong with your kid. That's a good middle ground.
And it's also just like a jump scare.
Yeah.
Like if somebody sneaks up on you in the dark.
That was originally in the movie, but they cut it out because they couldn't get it to look scary enough.
I can understand that being.
But in my head, I can picture it just scary enough.
I think it's scarier in the book than it is. And granted, I haven't seen the movie in a long time.
I also really like when she looks at the astronaut and is just like, "You're gonna die up there," and then pisses on the floor.
Yeah,
that's just another sort of like low key way to fuck with people.
That's a good one. Most of the other ones, to me, are mostly just gross, like masturbating with a crucifix. shoving
my
her
sweet sow.
shoving her mom's face in blood and telling her to lick her vagina.
Lick me. Yeah.
It's mostly just gross and shocking.
I like the scene where she, like, quote unquote, like, finally gets full possessed, where she's screaming about the imaginary friend kicking her and abusing her. If I saw my kid doing that, I would freak the fuck out.
Oh yeah, obviously, like,
because again, that's a good combination between adult fear and maybe supernatural shit.
I think some of the things that are bordering on scary are when characters walk into the McNeil house and just hear the shouting.
Yeah.
And it's just like, what is going on?
It very much
room?
reminds me of a bad night at my job, which is a psych ward. So I've been there, and it is very unsettling when somebody's just not there and just wailing. That kind of shit haunts me too.
I really like this scene where Father Karras goes in the house for the first time, and he's like completely skeptical. He doesn't believe her at all. And then he walks in and he just... Or no, he doesn't even walk in. It's like when he's standing in the doorway, he just feels the presence. And the whole thing is he has to make that one step in. And it says... this is paraphrasing, but he walks in and then it's like, and Father Karras made his choice or something like that. That's a really cool scene.
A wonderful day for an exorcism.
Always reminds me of Worf, like, it's a good day. Today is a good day to die.
Every day is a good day to die.
If you're a Klingon.
Yeah. Warrior race.
Yep.
God, I feel like I'm missing one.
I mean, this is another one of, like, these books where we could have, like, a 3-hour episode and not talk about everything.
If Hef was here, this would be a 3-hour episode.
Yeah, it would be. I think we got, like, the worst ones.
Yeah, I thought we probably did good.
I mean, just, okay, like, we didn't talk about the diarrhea, the vomiting, then that just contributes to the, like, this is just, like, gross and shocking, and they are so many times where it's just like, and they went in and changed her sheets, and they went in and changed her sheets, and Sharon was walking by with soiled sheets, and they changed her sheets, and...
It is very gross, but I do think it adds, like, an extra emphasis. Again, I've had patients that just completely soiled themselves all the time. And it is awful.
Yeah.
I mean, you've been there.
Yeah. Part of kids.
We had one, not dysentery. It's some disease that makes you shit yourself a bunch. We had a patient who had
dysentery.
Is that
that
dysentery? Okay, then
dysentery is like really bad diarrhea.
Okay, well, that's what he had.
It's like can be fatal diarrhea.
Okay, yeah, that was it.
It was it was one of the number one killers of soldiers in the Civil War because they would get dysentery in the camps.
Okay, well then there we go. Yeah,
it's bad.
Yeah, it's so I mean it is gross, but I was like, oh, I relate to this.
The power of Christ compels you. The power of Christ compels you.
Well, that kind of brings us to power of Christ compels you, satanic panic. And a lot of the stuff in this book, again, like some of like the Jungian stuff and some of the psychology stuff, treats it as kind of just like a fact. Well, where there's a lot more discussion of like what was propaganda and what was actually happening, like what was tortured out of people versus what they might have actually done.
Yeah. What occurred to me is like the satanic panic was like a cultural thing that happened in the 80s where people just started freaking out about devil worshippers and all this shit that mostly didn't actually happen in the United States. And I'm wondering, like, how much this book, and even more so the movie that was in the 70s, contributed to that satanic panic that happened in the 80s.
I think this was part of the prelude that led up to that.
And, of course, this would have been something good to research. Maybe I'll do some research and we'll talk about it on the movie episode.
Yeah, but I don't know if we could definitively prove it either way. So,
and I'm not looking to definitively prove anything except that you're a freaking pervert.
It's an interesting discussion.
Yeah.
So
that was something that occurred to me while I was reading. But I mean, we've been talking about religion like this entire episode, so
I mean, it's a very religious book. So.
This is this or The Stand. I don't know which one is the more, but those are like the two like most religious books that we've read so far.
Yeah.
I guess this is more so than The Stand, but it's close.
It's close.
And I think the thing about this book, it's it's less religious than you might expect because it focuses so much on psychology and medicine also, but it's still, like, religion is huge.
If this was a UFC fight, the winner would be determined by split decision.
Yeah. I'm just pretending I know what that means.
It's where you got like 3 judges and 2 of them went for one guy and 1 went for another guy. The decision split, where a unanimous decision is they all voted one
So do
way.
they do that when they, like, knock each other out?
No, because then you technically win by a TKO.
Okay. If both people knock each other out?
Oh, okay, then I have never seen that happen.
Okay, so when do you... So there's like a point... There's a point system, right?
Yeah, and
Okay.
you have so many rounds, and if you both make it through all the rounds, it goes to the judges.
Okay.
If you knock somebody out, you just win.
Okay.
Unless you knock them out using something illegal like a ball kick.
Okay. What's a ball kick?
Like kicking them in the nuts.
Oh, like...
Yeah, like kicking them in the balls.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's where you kick them with the ball of your feet. Like,
Yeah.
like you kick them in the temple with the ball of your foot. And they're
Yeah.
like, okay.
Yeah. Or, I think there are certain blows to the back of the head that are illegal, like if they're at a certain position.
I would think that, like, hitting anybody in the back of the head would be... Because that's super dangerous.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it standing up in the UFC, but...
I guess just the UFC in general is super dangerous.
Yeah,
so.
Sorry. I got tangent about fighting.
Yeah. I don't like fighting.
Yeah.
Oh my god, are you Stephen King? No, I'm Dean Koontz. Oh.
Kings and Koontz, which is... This is hard. What's your king?
My king is the investigative aspect of the entire book. I loved it in Ring. I loved it in this.
I think that's my king too, with a close follow-up just being I'm not a Catholic. My father's family is Catholic, and I really like learning about Catholicism. I think Catholicism is super interesting. Even if I became a faithful person later in life, I don't think I could ever be a Catholic because...
It seems like so much work.
Yeah. But I just think it's a very interesting religion.
Yes.
And I love learning about it. And I think, like, the people who decide to be priests or nuns or whatever else, like, it's just such a unique choice that I'm always, like, fascinated to learn about those types of characters.
Yeah.
So that's my runner-up. My Koontz is Kinderman, but again, like, I don't think I would have that opinion if I read a physical copy of the book.
My Koontz... It's not fair because I praised it so much, but I would have liked a little bit more of Marin, I guess.
Yeah. Just a little.
Yeah, like a couple more breadcrumbs.
Yeah, just not a lot.
Because he's the title character, and he shows up for like 20 pages.
Yeah. Maybe 30.
Yeah.
Not a lot.
Yeah.
I legitimately forgot he died.
Yeah.
I thought that he lived and Karis died. Like, I always remember that Karis dies because it's such an iconic death, like going out that window and down those stairs. Mm-hmm. But I really forgot that Marin dies. Does he live in the movie?
I mean, you want me to spoil it?
I mean, I've seen it.
I just don't remember. They both die.
Okay.
And in the movie, it's like more ambiguous as to why he died. They make it look like Reagan might have killed him.
Okay. It is just, in the book, he dies of the strain.
Yeah.
Of this. It makes a point of telling you that he's taking these nitroglycerin pills and that he has health problems, and the exorcism has a huge toll. Mm-hmm. And the strain of it kills him. Just like the strain of it may kill Reagan.
Yeah.
Did you think it was strange that, like, I feel like if I were Chris McNeil and I went through this, I would just immediately convert to Catholicism, and I'm all the way on the Jesus train.
You know what? That one was that was also kind of weird. Mm-hmm. I feel like if for no other reason, you kind of owe him.
Yeah, exactly. And also just like, it doesn't definitively prove that the Christian God is real, but
they definitively solved your problem.
Yeah, and it also definitively proves that there is something.
Yeah.
So I feel like you got to get on the team.
Yeah, like you owe them that. Like, at least Reagan should start going to Catholic school.
Yeah, at the very least, you need to like, you know, give some money to the church. Like,
I think that might be my new Koontz. It's just like, because she just hops right back on being a little bit more skeptical, not 100%. She's like, well, I don't believe in God, but there's probably something. And she doesn't even say there's definitively something.
2 priests literally died to save your daughter.
I don't believe in God, but I believe in the devil.
Yeah, that I thought that was kind of straight both times I read the book.
Yeah, now that I think about it.
Does not ruin the book in any way, shape, or form, but it's weird.
It also seems like kind of a human reaction. Like, once your problem is solved, you stop going to church, you stop praying.
Exactly. Which I guess maybe that was supposed to be a commentary, but I genuinely feel like if I were her, I'd be like, we're going every Sunday.
If something even like 5% like this happened to me, you would see me going to mass every day.
Yeah.
I'd convert.
No, I would also.
So.
And I am very outspoken, not a fan of organized religion, but...
Same, but I like if your kids were saved by 2 priests and they died in the process, it'd be like...
We're Catholic, baby.
Sorry.
Yeah. Get yourself a rosary, it's happening. Same with a Salem's Lot. I'd be like, I'm Catholic now. Like,
yeah, I mean, like, these work.
Yeah, let's do it. I'm on the team. All right, ranking. I did not rank this one ahead of time. It's going to be high.
Mine's pretty high.
I'm not sure how high. So it sounds like you already know.
Yeah.
So what is yours?
It's my number 2. It's above Pet Sematary.
And below Lolita.
Yep. Them Lolita pros, they just work for me.
It is a prettily written book. It is. I think it's my number 4.
Still pretty good.
It's close with Dracula, but I think ultimately Dracula just has a little bit more that I specifically like.
Yeah.
Not even necessarily like the vampire aspect of it, just the epistolary novel, the ensemble of characters.
It has Mina.
Yeah, it's Mina fucking Harker. Although Chris McNeil is really good.
Yeah.
She's really great. So I think it's a close 4th to Dracula at number 3. But I really feel like it and Pet Sematary are definitively my 1 and 2. And but I mean, just these collection of books, like, they're all just stellar.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We haven't read very many bad books.
In my opinion, we have read 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 2 okay books, and then 17 really good books.
Yeah. No, that's about where I'm at.
Yeah.
I think our big difference is our opinions on Lolita.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah,
but
so that just is what it is.
That's very explainable.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's society. Society is very polarized on Lolita, so
yep,
that totally makes sense.
Homework.
Fuck. All right. What is your priest origin story? Why did you become a priest? Oh God! I just walked into a hornet's nest. Give me a sexual reason and a not sexual reason.
Oh, okay.
For the nuns, baby. It's raining habits in here.
I was gonna go way darker.
For the little boys.
Altar boys,
For
yeah.
altar
I was
boys,
gonna be
yeah.
like, okay, you know Humbert. Well, now imagine it was altar boys.
Can you help out an old altar boy, Father? Yeah, I can help you.
For people who don't know, one of my biggest fetishes that Ryan has just known for years is I'm also attracted to nuns. So
attracted to women who hide their parts.
Yeah, like conservative clothing. It drives me bonkers.
Yeah, which I don't share, but I understand.
But a more serious priest origin story. Oh, okay. I'll just combine it with like my own like interest in this. I become a priest with the idea of setting out and trying to prove it, like scientifically. You know, that desire I want to prove the supernatural is I go one day, I don't believe in this, but I'm going to commit and try to figure it out just from the inside.
Okay, so I'm a young Italian boy. And I go to mass regularly with my mother. We live in Rome. One day she dies in a terrorist bombing. And I'm adopted by a priest. And I grow up continually raised Catholic. When I come of age, I join the Italian military and do my years. Because I'm a pacifist, I decide to become a helicopter pilot instead of being a soldier, but I do my duty. But I'm sickened by the world that took my mother, and my secret goal becomes that I want to prove that God is real and prove Catholicism, and I indoctrinate myself, and I become an extremist. And then the Pope dies, and my adopted father, the priest who raised me, becomes the Pope, and he makes me his Camerlengo. And then I find out about this new scientific thing called antimatter. So I hire the Hashashin to be my shadowy figure, and we kill the scientist who has this, and he steals this antimatter that can essentially be used as a bomb. And I have him bring it to the Vatican City, where I'm going to use it to create this situation in which the Pope, my adoptive father, who I just murdered, we're going to have to choose a new Pope, but I'm going to use this antimatter bomb to create a situation where I have saved the Catholic Church, and they make me the Pope by divine right so that I can change the Catholic Church back to the way that it should. But this stupid professor from Harvard just fucks the whole thing up.
You should make this a book.
I should make this a book, and it would probably make an okay movie, better than another movie that's based on another book that I might write, but still not as good as the book.
Still not as good as the book.
Yeah. And we could get the guy who plays Obi-Wan to be this character. That'd be great.
Okay.
Question for the listeners. Have you read The Exorcist, or have you just seen the movie? Have you done both? Let us know. Reach out to us on our socials. For further reading, I wrote down Ring by Koji Suzuki and The Amityville Horror by Jay Anson, which does not have the investigative end of it, but it definitely has the spooky, scary spirit end of it. There are some similarities between the two books. So if you like the spooky shit that Reagan does, you probably will also like the Amityville Horror.
I'm trying to remember the name of the demonologist that investigated that. The Conjuring movies are based off of them. Mm-hmm. They also fascinate me.
Yeah.
There are a couple of people that I don't believe they ever proved anything, but I believe that they actually believe it. Mm-hmm. I find them to be super fascinating characters. And I agree, if you're interested in this stuff, that it's a great place to start.
Do you have any other recommendations?
Legion. Yeah. It's really kind of, just a continuation, so.
I'm excited to start it.
No, I think we've really sold the Ringu comparisons in this episode.
Yeah, I was shocked.
Yeah.
By how I just was constantly comparing the two
and
books.
You even get a creepy little girl. Mm-hmm. I guess it's a creepy young woman.
Yeah.
In the book, but
no, I thought about the two. That Reagan and Sayako are just total victims.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not Reagan who's lashing out at the people, but it looks like it's Reagan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So, upcoming on the Horror Babylon next Sunday, we will be doing the film The Exorcist from 1973. And
real excited.
Yeah, we did a good job of not talking about it too much in the book episode, but we'll do a lot of comparing and contrasting of the book and the movie in that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. And then the next Sunday, September 10th, our next novel episode will be the sequel novel, Legion, by William Peter Blatty, which...
Blat Attack.
Scar on the brain. And then our next 2 bonus episodes on Thursday, August 31st, going back to Treehouse of Horror for the second Simpsons Frankenstein parody, Frankenstein. And then the next episode, Thursday, September. It's almost September, Jesus.
Yeah.
We are doing the next episode of the Alienathon with Alien versus Predator, or as we dubbed it recently, AV.
Hooray.
Yeah, it's Alien Cubed, Alien Resurrection, and AF, and then AF Requiem, and then I don't know, Prometheus. I don't know. We'll think of something.
We'll come up with something.
Yeah. And
Prom night.
Alien Covenant.
Covenant.
It's because it's COVNANT.
Yeah.
Covenant. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you to our patrons, Abigail the First, Breaker of Chains, Mother of Dragons, and
Logan,
the Full Metal Patron. And Ben the Fourth, Patron of Hope, our newest patron who has brought hope to us.
Yeah.
So he's the Patron of Hope because he brings hope, and he's a patron.
Yeah.
And also Star Wars.
He's a big hype man for us too, so
good.
Yeah.
We need a good hype man. Our social media guy's kind of slacking. I'm kidding. You do a good job.
I try.
You do a good job. I like your memes. Your memes are great.
I've scaled them back a little for you.
That's okay. The only time I ever had to say something was I don't want to see 1,000 Lolita memes. I'm sorry.
I forgot I did that.
Yeah, and it wasn't just me. There's a real possibility that some people who follow our pages may also not want to see that. So, obviously, not everybody. And thank you to Four Horsemen Comics and Gaming, who would probably be totally down with all the Lolita memes. And if you want to know for sure, you can go to the Morgantown Mall in Morgantown, West Virginia.
Ask him for his Lolita stamp.
Ask for Ronald III, Grandpa's of Christmas. And if you want to have the Four Horsemen experience without the Ron experience, then you can go to the Mall of Robinson at Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, where their other location is. It's a very nice store. Thank you for reading The Exorcist and recording with me tonight.
You're very welcome.
And thank you to everybody for listening. Stay tuned for our socials and stay scary.
Stay scary, everybody.
And now for the obligatory socials. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can find the podcast on Twitter at HorrorPod69. You can also follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Slasher, and Goodreads. Become part of the Disturbed community by asking for the Facebook group and Discord links. Send dick pics to the Horror of Babylon podcast at gmail.com. Support the show at patreon.com/the Horror of Babylon. In closing, you can let your friends know that the Horror of Babylon is available on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, and all other major podcast apps. Stay scary.